See, you already seen the elementary, you've seen the high school, we're going to the middle school later. But I thought we also needed a little preschool action here too, so we can cover the whole gamut, okay? So this is Jessica Hobbs. Her and Eric Hobbs are owners of Posh Academy, currently located out at Flex. They run a preschool program out there. And she's just going to talk to y'all a little bit about some early childhood education and that type of stuff. So I'll let her have it.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for asking me to come today. Sometimes preschool kind of gets forgotten, so I'm going to take you guys a little out of your comfort zone and back to early childhood. Did you guys have a good morning? Where have you been? Did anybody offer up where you guys have been today? I don't know. The high school, the new high school?
Concord Elementary.
And Concord Elementary? Okay, well, what I want you to do is, I do realize you're eating, so I'm not going to have you close your eyes and eat at the same time. But I want you guys to just visualize. And I want you to visualize something that you really enjoy doing. And it may have been something even back in early childhood, or elementary school, or middle school. And when you got a chance to do whatever this was, time went really fast. 2 hours seemed like 5 minutes, and then someone would call time, and man, you were upset because you wanted to keep doing this. And I want you to hold that in your thought today while I talk about a different approach to education. And if we ever change education, and when we do change education, we usually start at the bottom with the preschool area, and that's where we're going to make that change. So there's a guy, and his name is Ken Robinson, and he is an educational guru and PhDs in psychology and education, and he works with governments. He works with governments in Europe, and he's also worked with our government here in America on trying to revolutionize education. And what he tells us is that we are experiencing a crisis of human resources. So what does that mean? He says that we're making poor use of our talents. Do you guys think that? Yes. You think we do it within our education system? Maybe there's not enough time for them to explore those talents? Sometimes. Well, he says that a majority of Americans are living for the weekend. Raise your hand if you live for the weekend. All right. Well, the majority of Americans are living for the weekend. And there's a minority of Americans who don't live this way. And it's just a minority. They love what they do, and there's not a difference between Friday at 5 and Monday at 8 a.m. Because they're passionate about what they do, they love it, and they can't get enough of it. And when you really enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't really leave your mind, which results in progress and innovation. And we want more students coming out being progressive and innovative, and hopefully happy. Even if we just boil it down to being happy, Monday through Friday, right? So I'm going to talk, well, I don't know if everybody's eating. Is there anybody who would like to volunteer that I could get 2 volunteers? I didn't introduce. This is my son, and he's not Trent, he's homeschooled. And this is my Tanner, and this is my husband, Eric, who also owns Posh Academy with me, and we're both educators.
Homeschool as well.
2 volunteers. Anybody? If you would. Okay. And what's your name? Tammy. Anybody else?
Come on,
Matt.
Matt.
Oh, hey, right here. Okay. What I'm going to ask is these 2 guys. Guy now. Sorry. We have Tammy and what's your name? Sean. Nice to meet you, Sean. So I want you to think about something you like to do. It doesn't have to be something you're currently doing. Just something that you enjoy. Okay? And I'm going to send you to the table in the back. And the table in the back has...
Does it have to be academic? You might have to draw on it.
Jeez! All right, here's what I have. The two tables back there have a variety of resources. So no, I'm not going to ask you to draw if you don't want to. You may choose to write. You may choose to build with wire. I don't really care what you choose. All I ask is that you find some way in our time to express something that you like to do to the rest of the group. So, you guys head back there. It's open-ended.
Yes, it is.
And I'm not giving you directions. So the educational philosophy I'm going to talk about is called the Reggio. Oh wait, when you come, we good?
There's fuzzy on instructions. They don't like open-ended stuff, I think.
Well, it's because we grew up in a system that I'm going to talk about. Just be creative. He's going to help you out a little bit. So the approach that I'm going to talk about is called the Reggio Emilia approach to education. Now, this approach takes in those interests, things that you like to do. It takes in children's curiosity, and it respects and values a child. They also believe that a child innately can guide their learning through their curiosity. Now, how did I even get to this point with Reggio? Well, my journey started when I very first started teaching. When I finished graduate school, I got my master's in early childhood education, and Eric drove me to Chicago, unwillingly, to start with. And we were both educators, so we were teaching. Our very first summer there, we were offered a job at the Francis Parker School of Chicago. And we just basically needed money, so we took the job. Not really even knowing what we were getting into. But that summer was awesome. The time went so fast. I loved what I did, and I probably had more fun than the students had. But then summer was over, and we went back to our jobs. He taught inner city, and I had gotten a job at a charter school in Chicago for refugee children. Well, part of the way through that school year, I got a call from Francis Parker. And since I had been there, I had learned that Francis Parker was a very nationally known, well-known liberal arts school. I didn't really know that when I had started. And so I knew that this was an opportunity of a lifetime, and I could not pass this up. I had to go. So the position they offered me was coordinator of their after-school programs. But keep in mind, an after-school program there is very different than what we call an after-school program here. Their after-school program started at 11 a.m. And so we think of after school as being, 3 o'clock, school's over. Let's go do something. Their after-school program started at 11 a.m. This school spanned from preschool through 12th grade. At 11 a.m., these preschool and kindergartners had choices to make. And they could choose from a buffet of choices. They could have instrument class, they could have dance class, they could have cooking and science, and the list went on. And these classes lasted 6 weeks. But what I noticed was so different about them is who taught these classes. They were professionals. And when I say professionals, it was a choreographer who was choreographing on Broadway and spending their time there at that school. And when I say they taught a cooking class, it was a chef, a renowned chef, who came in to do these things. So they valued the choices these kids were making, and they also valued the fact that they could engage these children into in-depth conversation and in-depth projects. So that was very, very different for me. I kind of wanted to go back to school and start all over. To have the opportunity to take these classes that only the preschool and kindergarten were taking. And this continued on throughout through 12th grade. So life went on. I loved my job there, but things brought us back to Western Kentucky. And so we both took jobs in the public school system. And at that time, I spent time reflecting on where I had been, because I'm not sure I had appreciated what it was, the difference that I had. And I started to research more about Francis Parker. And why did I love walking through those doors every day? And why did I spend my weekends even there when I wasn't getting paid? Because I loved what I did. But one difference is when I walked through those doors, and I was a small girl from Western Kentucky in Chicago, and many of these were Ivy League graduates, I was never denied. My ideas were never denied, not once. Would they add on to my ideas? Absolutely. They would, and they would heighten those, but I was never denied. So I felt very accepted, but what did that in turn make me want to do? Work harder. I wanted to work harder. I wanted to know more, and I wanted my ideas to get out there to them. I wasn't afraid to talk about it. And that was the biggest difference. But also, it wasn't just me. It was to all their staff. It was to all their teachers, and it was mostly to their students. The student had an idea, they went with it. Because they can guide their own learning. So in my research, I had found that Colonel Francis Parker was the father of progressive education. And I didn't even know that when I was there. But they still stand today, that they promote that progressive education. And these teachers at this school are all offered a sabbatical year. They're paid for their sabbatical year because they know that progress is important. And so they send these teachers around the world to study philosophies. And I found that the early childhood teachers were spending their sabbatical years in Reggio Emilia, Italy. And that's when I became super interested in the Reggio approach. So I'm going to attempt to explain the Reggio approach. And it's a very complex approach to education. And even the Italians will tell you it took them 50 years to perfect it, and they're still working on it. So I'll just touch the surface on it to kind of give you an idea. To start out with, in the world of education, we have linear and we have organic philosophies. And a linear philosophy is more of a factory-style philosophy, and most of you guys probably, and I know myself, was in a linear environment. And what I'm saying is we have a curriculum that's A to Z. We're going to get from A to Z, and we have certain skills that we're going to use to get there, and then we're going to graduate. Okay? An organic curriculum is very different. And what it is more of an agricultural model. We act more as farmers in preparing an environment that can nourish children, that can nourish those interests, and can make them good at what they are good at. So I will start with the history. I'll just go real brief history of where Reggio came from. Reggio is currently revolutionizing the world because it's not just here, it's in Europe, it's in Italy, it's Australia, it's in Canada, and it's really sweeping the early childhood environment. But it's not new. It started right after World War II. And what happened is that there's this small town of Reggio Emilia, Italy. And obviously after the war, they were completely devastated. And they needed to quickly rebuild. It was a very small and tight-knit community. And so they all came together, and they had a desire for change and a desire for a just system, and most of all, a desire to be free from oppression, obviously, after the war. And so they came together, and they wanted more for their children than what they had. they wanted a different environment. How can we change what we've just been through? And so that is where the radio philosophy began. There was a young teacher by the name of Laura Smalley-Guzzi. And Laura Smalley-Guzzi was listening to these families and what they wanted. And he became the leader in this change. And he became the leader in building these schools. And when I say they built these schools, the community came together and physically even built them so that they'd have a better place to quickly get back to normal for their children. So Laura Smalley-Guzzi, he began, is that, okay. This is Laura Smalley-Guzzi, and he began to observe after he had worked on this approach. He began to observe the children and how they were growing. And so he took this philosophy across Italy, and then he began to speak across Europe. And people started to listen. And so through his observations, he also created a book called The 100 Languages of Children. And the book is kind of a fairly complex book, but the basis is that children have 100 different languages. And the meaning of that is that they can't express what they know or what they're curious about in 100 different ways. Mostly hands-on, especially at the early childhood stage. So it could be sculpting, it could be drama, it could be just being excited over something, but they have 100 different ways to do that. And we need to recognize that we are not there to dictate those 100 different ways of how they learn. Now, this 100 languages, people became interested in it, and people in North America became interested in it, the United States and Canada. And so there's something called the 100 Languages Exhibit, and that exhibit has been traveling North America and Canada, or well, United States and Canada, we are in North America. But it has mostly been in urban areas and larger metropolitan areas. And when it goes to an area, it stays for about 6 months. And teachers come to learn because not everybody can get to Italy, and myself included. But recently, this exhibit was in Henderson, Kentucky. And why would it be in Henderson, Kentucky? Well, Audubon Head Starts, which cover Owensboro, Henderson, and a pretty large portion of that area, they became very interested in the Reggio approach and started working this into their classrooms because they really believed in it. And this was a great thing to be in our public school systems. And in the past few years, they have sent all of their head teachers to Italy in the summer to train in this approach. And so now people are visiting Henderson, Kentucky to see this approach to education. So we are making, in my opinion, a move in the right direction. So yay for Kentucky. The vision of Reggio. Like I said, it's a very complex philosophy, but if I can say anything and you come out with anything from Reggio, it's the vision. How they view a child. They view a child as strong, powerful, rich in potential, driven by the power to grow, and nurtured by adults who take this drive seriously. And that goes back to the experience I was telling you at Francis Parker, that these young children, their choices were taken seriously, and they were taken seriously by professionals who were willing to come in and work with these kids. And so they also know that they can guide their learning. Children can guide their own learning. And so they give them that freedom to make choices throughout the day. Now, what does it look like? What does the environment look like that we could create to have all of you guys working on your own interests? And we encourage that. What do you guys picture Everybody but Stacy, don't, she can't answer. You guys can picture and tell me something if you walked into a preschool classroom right now, what it looks like. What are the colors on the wall? What is primary colors? Yes. What else do you picture in a preschool classroom? I know you guys have kids. Blocks, yes.
Lots of arts and crafts on the walls.
Arts and crafts on the walls, yes. Anything else? These are all things that we see in preschool classrooms. And we're used to seeing these things. But if you walk into a Reggio classroom, you know that you're in a different place. And the reason being is there are no primary colors. The walls are very neutral. It's very inviting and very warm, and it's very beautiful with natural light coming in. It's very beautiful with plants growing and lots of natural materials. You really don't see even a lot of plastic, which we kind of promote in America, I think. You don't see a lot of plastic, and definitely you're not going to see commercialism in any way. They also have, I should have talked about that, the thoughtful art displays. There are no crafts, but there's art. And these art displays are very beautiful and almost gallery-like. You would think that you're walking into a gallery. And the reason being is because every Reggio school has something they call an atelierista. An atelierista is someone who is trained in the arts. They have some sort of background in the arts. And so this person is there to collaborate with other teachers and make it a beautiful environment because they respect the children enough to have glass in a preschool. And guess what? That glass really does not ever get broken. I think the only glass I know broken was by a teacher. And they respect them. They trust them. And the atelierista's job is also to take what the children are learning and to help them find a creative way to express that. And permanent, yeah, they trust them with permanent markers. They trust them, they do trust these children. And if you bring the children up to that and you expect that from them, you usually get it. Surprisingly. Sometimes we have to persuade parents. Then we do. All right, and the organization of time. You guys are thinking about this. People are working on different things. And I said there's not, the bell's not going to ring and we're going to move on to the next thing. So their time in these schools looks very different than the time that you and I were probably used to. We were used to bell going off, or as Americans, we were right on schedule. Speaking of that, I have like 3 minutes. But the Italians, if you guys know anything or are Italian, they have a very loose view of time. So there is a schedule of some sort. Obviously, they're going to eat and rest and things like that near the same time of day. But when a child is ready to explore, let them go. I'm not going to stop that because as the teacher, I am ready for the next thing to happen. They give them time to explore. I'll go quickly. So the curriculum looks a lot like this. These are the things going on in that classroom during those large spans of time. There's environmental projects, daily life projects, and self-managed projects. Environmental projects are in these classrooms. Obviously, there is going to be like that block center. There's going to be a construction place. And there's going to be a home play place. And children are able to have the freedom to explore those and to come up with projects. An example of one of these is recently there was instruments on the shelf, and the children got excited about the instruments. But they didn't really get excited about just the instrument. They really were more excited about performing. And so they became huge rock stars, and they were being really loud and loving to perform, but the teachers noticed that. And so they said, well, what can we do to provide that environment for them to expand on? And so they created an amphitheater for these kids. And they did. They began to explore that even more. Daily life projects are projects that kids come in and thoughts that they come in with every day. So an example was one of the kids went to a city, and during discussion time, there is a discussion time every day, and that's where the teachers come up with their curriculum from these discussions or from their observations. And he talked about the city. So, what did they create? They spent, 2 weeks or 3 weeks on it, creating it, but they created a city out of boxes, and they, also the teacher took little images of all the kids, and she shrunk them down, and she put plastic on them, on them, and so they could play with their own self in their little mini city. So they placed themselves right there in that city. And self-managed projects, this is just an example. It's a project that they could come to and from, such as weaving. It's easy to learn. They can come to it, do it, but they can leave it. The last thing I'll talk about is observation and documentation. You guys may be thinking, well, this is awesome. How do we assess it? How do we, in our culture, we want something to come back to us, giving us the scale. Where is my child on the scale? And so to do that, our teachers spend time observing and documenting. And so they document through pictures and videos. They document children's conversations with each other, not just with the teacher, and dictation of their art. Whatever they have created, there's dictation from the child. Oh, I almost forgot my volunteers in the back.
You forgive us.
All right. Would you guys like to, are you ready? Sure.
Okay, the glue sticks.
Oh, okay. Well, we can just put it in his copy. That way you don't lose anything.
Well,
Okay, Miss Tammy, tell us.
You said they were supposed to guess what I was supposed to do. Oh,
Well, no, because this is all about you.
I like that. Oh, boy.
You don't have to worry about the world around you.
I like to sing. I like music. I did music notes, although I can't read a lick of notes of music. I only sing by ear, so I like music. So.
Very good. Thank you, Taylor. You can take that with you. Oh, and he told me to get away.
it's based on the fact of today being an education day,
Yes.
and this is my closest attempt to being an educator. A couple of experiences, my time as a dare officer, and also, well, both of them have to do with influencing young people. My time as a dare officer, or my time now as a basketball coach, but also as we did a program when Coach Berry was here that I was in charge of called a 3-on-3 hoop test. I went out and bought portable basketball goals, and we could go to the neighborhood and shut down the block. I put a car in each end of the block, put a basketball goal up in the street, and we play basketball. So.
These are lunch working. Thank you guys very much. Now, what they did was both very different. They both expressed themselves in a different way, but they were still able to show you and tell you what it was they enjoyed doing. So, I know my time is up. So, I'm just going to let this play. But I just ask that you just think about that. If you were offered that type of environment, maybe in a school setting or even in a workplace, do you think that you would make better use of your talents? Thank you, guys.
Are you, am I here?
Oh, yeah, go.
I don't remember before.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Melissa Duncan. I'm the director here at the Challenger Center. I'm going to go over a little bit what we do, and then we're actually going to take you to space here in just a second on a quick ride. So we're going to get up and go back and see the good stuff, not just me here. All right.
You can turn it off.